All right, let's get started. How are you doing? How was your night? Last night, did you have a long night? Everybody awake? I can see some people nodding. So what I learned last night is that people in Spain actually eat very late. So we ordered dinner, and the time we actually got dinner was 12 a.m. So I had a long night, not because we went out for a lot of drinks, but just because we got dinner late. So if I'm a bit tired, please forgive me. What I'm going to do to keep you guys awake today is I have a few slides, about 10, but I'll try to keep this session very demo heavy, spend a lot of time in the product itself, so that you can actually see the power of it. And at the end of the session, everybody of you will be able to build the same application that I will build during the session. We also have some hands-on labs that you can find outside, where you can create the same application that I'll create here, and we have a demo script in the hands-on labs that you can use. And there's actually some extras in there that I will not be able to show here because of time constraints. Sounds like a plan? All right, let's get started. Let's do some hands raising first. How many of you have heard about Visual Studio Light Switch before? That's not bad. How many have used it? Okay, that's less. We're going to change that today. How many of you have written HTML5 applications before? Okay, that's quite a few. So what we're going to do today is, so my name is up there. I'm Heinrich Wendel. I'm a program manager on the Visual Studio Lightswitch team, and I'm responsible for the client parts of Lightswitch, specifically the HTML client that we will talk about today. And we will talk about building modern HTML5 business apps on Windows Azure with Visual Studio Lightswitch. So you know the problem that you have when you want to write HTML5 applications. It's kind of a hype at the moment, but in reality, really different browsers support it in different levels. Different screen sizes need to have different layouts. Different devices have different browsers installed in it. So if you want to write an HTML5 modern business application, you really face a lot of challenges. And what Visual Studio Lightswitch does is it helps you to abstract all those things, and we thought about those problems for you so that you don't have to think about them anymore. What is Lightswitch? To put it in one sentence, Lightswitch is an RAD, Rapid Application Development Environment, on top of Visual Studio. So basically a set of designers that you get. And what it does for you is it takes care of all the plumbing and all the other stuff you have to write if you want to write your application in Visual Studio, so that you really can focus on the actual business logic. Think about all the applications that aren't built because of a lack of time or lack of skills. Think about the Excel spreadsheets that people are sending around via email, and you don't know which one is the latest version anymore. Or the Access applications that hang around on some file shares that don't really have proper multi-user support and that kind of stuff. And that's what Visual Studio Lightswitch basically does for you. We create a roadmap for the application that you need when your user base grows, when the requirements grow. What we do under the hood for you is we create a 3-tier architecture automatically, and you don't have to worry about it. So what that means is you can start with a very simple application. You have, at the beginning, a very access-like interface to create the data and the screens. And then, as your application grows, you can extend it. You can write your business logic. You can deploy it to Windows Azure. It's multi-user. It has proper permission management. And you get all of that stuff that you wouldn't get on Access and those kinds of Office applications. It's not only a toy. We have customers, and they've written applications with over 500 screens. Think about it, 500 screens. I don't want to use that application. One of our MVPs put it in one simple sentence that I stole down there on the slide, which I think summarizes our design philosophy in a very good way, which is, LightSwitch is simple on the outside, but rich on the inside. What kind of applications can you build with LightSwitch? So there are a lot of different kinds of applications that you want to build, and let's face it, LightSwitch is not the right tool for all of them. But what we try to do is we try to focus on the kinds of applications that we think are very common in your business. And those are the three kinds of applications that we think that are very common. First, mobile web business apps. You might have heard all those recent reports from Gartner and IDC that PC sales are declining and tablet sales are increasing and phone sales as well. And there are certain challenges around creating those kinds of applications that work across the breadth of devices, not only on Windows devices, not only on the Surface, not only on Windows 8, but really across the breadth of devices on iOS, on Android, every device which supports HTML5. That's the first category of applications. The second one, desktop business apps. We had support for those kinds of applications since a while now. And basically, those are based on Silverlight. They are optimized around heavy data entry. You'll see a lot of grids in those applications. You'll see a lot of keyboard usage in those. You have support for things like legacy COM interop. And those clients are still around in the current world of the current version of LightSwitch as well. And finally, Office 365 and SharePoint 2013 applications. Are there any SharePoint developers in the room? Okay, a few. I'll talk in more detail about this one in my session on Friday around 2 p.m. Basically, to summarize this one, SharePoint 2013 introduced a new app model which threw a lot of developers over a cliff because it's radically different from what they were used before. And they had a reason to do so, a very good reason, but still there's a challenge for developers to adapt to that new model. And what we did with LightSwitch is we really make it easy for you to develop in this new app model again. A bit of history. LightSwitch is around for about 2 years now. We released our first version in July 2011 as part of, actually not as part of Visual Studio 2010, but out of the box as an add-on to Visual Studio 2010. And those were the Silverlight and in-browser desktop apps that I already talked about. And we also had support to deploy those apps to Azure Cloud Services. We struggled a bit with the positioning of this out-of-the-box version. A lot of people were asking whether this is for like the access guy, the information worker, or the professional developer, or who our target audience really is with that release. So what we did with V2, the second release in August 2012, is we really put it into the box. Visual Studio 2012 Professional has Visual Studio LightSwitch in the box. And we added some new features to it as well. The two big main features are we completely rewrote our middle tier. Remember, we have a 3-tier architecture that we automatically build for you. And the middle tier now speaks OData services, which is a rich standard based on RESTful services widely adopted by the industry with players like SAP. We also added support to deploy your application to Azure websites. Now, what we are focusing on today is V3, which we released as a free update, Update 2 to Visual Studio 2012. Who of you has Visual Studio 2012 Update 2 installed already? Okay. The others should do that pretty soon because you get it for free to Visual Studio 2012, and you get a lot for free. You get the new HTML5 mobile clients, and you also get the SharePoint and Office 365 integration that I'll talk about on Friday. Since we are basing our HTML5 client on standards, HTML, CSS, and jQuery and jQuery Mobile, we have to make sure that we keep pace with the fast world of open source. So because of that, we already released a runtime update for this one, which we released in May 2013, just like a month ago, actually, which now adds support for the then-released jQuery Mobile 1.3. Let's take a quick look at the features that we added in Update 2. I will not talk about all of them in detail now. You'll see a lot of that in the actual demo. What you need to know is the HTML client is basically an SPA, single-page application. This is a new buzzword. The thing about SPAs is the client completely runs in your browser. When you navigate between pages and that kind of stuff, there is no post back to the server like you have in the MVC model. Everything runs on the client, which makes those kinds of applications very responsive to the user. Think about using the applications with touch, with your finger. You touch something, you get immediate feedback, page changes, you see the new data coming in, very fast, very responsive, something you won't get with MVC applications. We are based on jQuery Mobile 1.3, which is a widely adopted standard framework for mobile applications as well, which makes it easy for us to run on the wide variety of devices. And since you have those different devices, you have phones which have screen size about 3.5 inch to up to 5 inches for this Samsung Galaxy S, whatever. You have tablets, Android tablets with 7 inch, and you have like iPad with 10 and the Surface with 10 inch. So when you develop applications for mobile devices, you need to make sure that they actually scale to all those screen sizes. And we added some mechanisms for you that make it easier to scale to those screen sizes. It's a similar challenge that you also have with Windows 8 or Windows Store applications, where you have to design your applications for the full screen, but also for the snapped state. We added support for SharePoint 2013 apps. Again, I'll talk about that in detail on Friday. Basically, you can develop them for SharePoint on-premise as well as Office 365. Other things we added, performance-wise, think about mobile devices. A lot of the time, they are connected to mobile networks, 4G, 3G, 2G, no G. And what you really want to make sure is that the data that you transfer between the server and the client is as minimal as possible. So what we did is, on our middle tier, we changed our data transfer format to use JSON-Lite instead of Atom, which, since it's JSON and not an XML-based format, has a lot less payload to it and makes the whole connection a lot faster. And you also get that if you're still using the Silverlight client, so that applies to all of the clients we have. And finally, some other things. You're now able to localize your app into multiple languages. Can you imagine that we didn't have that for 2 years? It's probably something only an American company can do. And we added this server application context, which is important if you want to do some reporting scenarios. Because OData is still a bit weak in terms of reporting aggregates of data and that kind of stuff. We added some query capabilities on the server, which you can expose as separate web services, which you can then talk to on your client separately. I will not cover this in this session today, but if you're interested in that, it's part of the hands-on labs that we have outside on the booth, and we also have a lot of blog posts. In general, our blog is pretty good, just being for Visual Studio Lightswitch blog. We have a lot of posts in there that cover a lot of details that you might be interested in. What is the typical experience you have when developing Lightswitch applications? So usually, it's a 3-step process. First, with Lightswitch, since it's a data-driven approach, you always start to either define your data in the intrinsic database that we offer, and actually, you can do both if you want to. You connect to external systems, like other SQL databases, other web services that are exposed over RIA services or OData feeds, SAP data, whatever data you want to. And if you want to, you can actually create relations between different data sources, so-called virtual relations. And after you define your data, then create some screens for some common tasks. You browse through your data, You view the details of a specific entity. You provide a screen to add new entities, to edit the details of existing entities. Basically, the CRUD screens that you already know of. If you've done that, at this point of time, you already have a full-fledged 3-tier application that we created for you that you can deploy in Azure and run with functionality like paging and lists, search built in, and all that kind of stuff that you didn't have to worry about. We did the glue and all that plumbing for you in the background. Second, you refine your application. There's no business application without any business logic. So we provide you with certain hooks that allow you to drop into code, and that's where you actually author your business logic. When you insert new entities, when you create new entities, when you edit stuff, we have a lot of hooks. You can do permission management, checking of permissions, and so forth, where you actually go into the code and where you can focus on the core value of what you want to do to author your business logic. You can also customize your screen layouts, rearrange the fields on the screens, and apply some custom branding, your corporate design. I will show you how that works later. And you can define custom queries if you want to filter for specific data or if you want to resort it and that kind of stuff. And if that's not enough for you, you can always extend your application. We have a huge ecosystem of extension available on the Visual Studio Gallery. There are over 100 extensions on the gallery available for you, which have stuff like custom controls in there for like reporting scenarios. You can integrate with custom data sources. If the built-in data sources aren't good enough for you, there's a partner, RSS Bus, which actually released a lot of custom data source extensions so that you can connect to like CSV files or SQLite databases and all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge ecosystem around those controls. We have a lot of good partners in that space, like Telerik. Anybody around from Telerik? Hi. Component One. Anybody from Component One? And what else? Infragistics. Anybody from Infragistics? Cool. Thanks, guys. You're doing a really good job. Let's take a quick look at the architecture. And again, if you don't care, you don't need to worry about it at all, because that's what we create for you under the hood. The point I want to make here is that all that we do for you is based on existing Microsoft standards. We do not try to reinvent the wheel again. So, on the data source layer on the right side, we have some data sources built in for you. The most important ones, you can connect to SQL databases, to SQL Azure databases. You can connect to SharePoint lists or OData services, and then you can go to the custom data sources. On the middle tier basically runs on IaaS. On top of that, you have ASP.NET. And for our data services, we are using WCF data services, which expose the OData feeds. On top of that, that's actually what we do for you, the data workspace layer. And that's where we handle all the concurrency and merge conflicts and all that kind of stuff so that you don't have to worry about those really complex things in your business applications. Think about multi-user applications. The application will be deployed to the cloud or some IaaS server eventually, and multiple users will work on the application at the same time. They might be editing an entity at the same time as well. So on the server side, you need to take care about what do I do if two people edited the same entity at the same time? How do I merge those? And we did all of that in what we call our data workspace for you. And then we have the submit pipelines and the queries, and that's where you author your custom business logic. On the client side, as already mentioned, you basically got two choices. Either for more desktop-oriented applications, you go and write a Silverlight client, or for more mobile-oriented devices for your tablets and phones, you go and write HTML5-based clients. And what we made sure is that the experience you have for writing those applications is actually very similar. So we have a set of designers on top of Visual Studio, basically 3 designers. We have a screen designer, and the screen designer basically looks the same. It doesn't matter whether you write Silverlight or HTML5 applications. we have a entity designer, and we have a query designer. And again, on the client, you have the data service components, which talks to the data services on the middle tier. And then on the client, you write the screens, you write your methods that handle certain visualization, dynamic showing or hiding of UI, and that kind of stuff. And you can write your own controls or use the controls that we or jQuery Mobile already provide out of the box. The LightSwitch data service architecture is actually a key part of what we do. And even if you're not interested in our client parts, this one might actually be interesting for you. So as I explained in the beginning, what you can do, or what you basically do, you always start with your data in LightSwitch. You either create your intrinsic database, you define your entities, you define your relations and all that stuff, and then you can also connect to external data sources. And for each of those data sources, what we do on the middle tier is we expose them to the clients as OData feed. And in the middle tier, you write your business logic. So it actually doesn't matter if you use a LightSwitch client or if you write your own client. Say you want to write a native Windows Store application. You can do that. You just need to connect to the OData feed. It's a standard, right? You can write a native iOS application and talk to the middle tier. And in the middle tier, the same business logic is still running for you. So you can create multiple clients and connect to the same middle tier. You can even use Excel Power Pivot to connect to that middle tier and do some reporting, some nice graphs and charts based on the data that you have. So OData is actually a key part of what we deliver, and it's a very huge value proposition of what you get here for free. Hosting. You basically got two options. Depends on whether you want to go in the cloud or on-premise. Say for desktop applications, most of the time you still might want to have them on-premise. So our target scenario there is that you host them on IIS on-premise, the database, the intrinsic database on SQL Azure. You can have other databases on-premise that you connect to as external databases. Or if you have your mobile clients, most of the time they are on mobile networks, so if you don't want to deploy all the security infrastructure in your enterprise to actually expose that in a secure way, you host your mobile applications in the cloud. And for the cloud, we basically support Windows Azure. We support Windows Azure Cloud Services as well as Windows Azure websites. Most of the time, websites is good enough for you. You don't need cloud services. And we also support SQL Azure, where you host your data. Optionally, if you're going to SharePoint, this picture changes a bit, because then basically what you do is, instead of deploying to Windows Azure, you deploy to SharePoint on-premise, or you deploy to Office 365. In the background, Office 365 is actually using Azure for you and doing some magic there. So what did we think when we started to build this new HTML client? Basically, when you write mobile applications, you have three choices. Either you write native applications. You need to write one application for every single device that you want to support. One Android application, one iOS application, one Windows application, one BlackBerry application, one whatsoever. Or you write native applications, which is like a mix of HTML5 and hybrid with some glue code in between to use some of the fancy device capabilities that most of the time, let's be honest, business applications don't need. So, because our goal really was to target the breadth of devices to make your life easier so that you only have to write once and can deploy or actually run everywhere, we target HTML5. And we based it on standards. So there is already a huge ecosystem around JavaScript, jQuery, jQuery UI, a lot of controls, and all that kind of stuff out there that you can leverage, because that's what we based our experience on. If you're familiar with the Silverlight client, in the Silverlight client, you were already able to write your custom controls, to write your custom shells, and customize all this stuff, but it was actually not too easy. You had to create a lot of projects, your solution, package that separately, import it as an extension into your project that you wanted to use it, and all that kind of stuff. So what we did in the HTML client is we made it a lot easier. So writing custom controls in the HTML client, and I will show you that in a second. The only thing you do is on your screen, you drop into code, and you start writing JavaScript. You start reusing existing controls from this huge ecosystem that exists out there. These platforms we support, basically everything that supports HTML5. That means on iOS we support 5 and 6. This is for both iPhone as well as iPad. We support Android 4 devices, again, phones and tablets. We support Windows RT and Windows 8. We also support Android 2.3 and Windows Phone 7.5 with some limitations. And those limitations are just a result of those platforms not supporting HTML5 in the same extent. All right. Let's get started with demo. Enough theory. So here's the scenario. Imagine you are a moving company. So basically what you do is you move stuff around from place A to place B. A while ago, I relocated to Seattle, so I had to schedule an appointment. I called into the call center, and I recorded some basic information about me, where I live, how many rooms I have, how many furniture I have approximately, and that kind of stuff. And then, at the day of the movers actually came to my house, and what they did is they had pen and paper, and for every item that they packed into the container, they wrote one line on the paper, and for every item that had some kind of damage, they took a picture with their analog camera, and I imagine later they had to transcribe all of that into their computer to really make it auditable. So what we want to do here is we want to make that process easier. So since tablet sales are increasing, tablets aren't really expensive anymore, what we're going to do is we will make this one a tablet application. And in the remaining time that we have, we will actually get this complete tablet application done so that they can start using it instead of pen and paper. So I already prepared a solution here for you, and what this one is, it's basically already all the entities defined for you. You see, we have some appointment entity here, customers, employees, inventory items, and so forth. And then we have a lot of screens already created as well. And this is just the Silverlight application. So F5ing that now will show the Silverlight application, the application that the controls are moving will use in their call center. So there's a home screen here, which basically shows all of the upcoming appointments for this company. And imagine me calling in to the call center, and I'm doing a new appointment. In the appointment, you have a form, a simple form, where you can fill out when the appointment actually is supposed to start, when it's supposed to end, what kind of apartment I have. If I'm an existing customer, I can choose that from the list here, or I can enter some new information on the right side. And then I can assign a certain employee to it, test user. This is the inventory of rooms, and I can also add some notes to it. Be aware of the barking dog. Save this appointment, and now it's scheduled. So what we want to do here is now we want to create this mobile companion app that the movers are using on-site to actually perform the move. In order to do that, what we have to do is, you see there's already one client part of this project, which is the Silverlight client, and now we're going to add the second client, which is the HTML5 client. Right-click the project, Add Client. And it will now ask me which kind of client I want to add. In this case, there's only one option because I already have a Silverlight client. I'm going to add the HTML client. it now asks me whether I want to upgrade the project. So in the history slide before, you've seen we have V2 and V3. This project is still V2. In order to add an HTML client, you need a V3 project. And it's just performing the upgrade in the background now. Takes a few seconds, and then I will issue some warnings, which we can just ignore for now because the upgrade will just work. And as soon as it's done, you will see a second client below the first client in the screens, which is then called HTML client, and that's where we'll start to define our screens for this new kind of client. So that's the warning screen I talked about. Just ignore it for now. Go, go, go. There you go. Here you got the new client. So I'm the mover. What I want to see if I go on site is what is my next appointment. So let's start with creating a screen which shows the latest set of appointments that I'm supposed to go to. Add screen. And this is our add new screen dialog. We have a few screen templates predefined for you here. Those are the screen templates that we talked about before for the CRUD scenarios. You can browse your data, a list of data, view the details of an entity, and add and edit certain entities. So let's start with browsing some data. And the data I want to browse is the upcoming appointments. And my application already had a query defined for that. So upcoming appointments, OK. So this designer I talked about before, this is our screen designer. It's a hierarchical view of your screen, and you see you got your screen here. You can have multiple tabs in your screen, and then you have a rows layout with the appointment list, the actual list, and the row template, which is visualized by the individual list item. So F5 this, and we already have a running single-page HTML5 application that works across multiple devices in a matter of 5 minutes. Just imagine you creating this application from scratch, how many code you have to write until you reach that point. If you look at that list, you actually get stuff like paging already built into the list. So if I scroll down, and I would have enough appointment, it would continue to reload items on demand. And what this application also does, it scales to different devices. So this resolution is approximately, well, it's exactly actually the resolution of your surface. If you go smaller to like the iPad 1024/768, that's about this size. And you see we have some nice effects in there, like for the title you get the ellipses and all that kind of stuff, because on smaller devices you really have limited real estate, so you want to make sure that you don't wrap all that stuff around so that you don't have space left for the actual content. You really want to focus on the content in modern business applications. And then if you go even smaller to like the size of an iPhone, you see, we resize some font sizes for you, we make margins and padding smaller, the list becomes a bit smaller, and it still works on the phone as well. But, well, it's not really nice yet. If I'm on the iPad, there's this white list, and that's really not what you want to see. That's not the best use of the available space, so let's make that a bit nicer. And also show some other information in here. So let's see, I'm the mover. What I want to see is what is the date of the next appointment I have to go to, and probably the phone number of whom I need to call there. So instead of a list, what we want to have here now is really a tile list. So we just changed this one to a tile list. And you see, it changed this layout to be a rows layout with all the properties that this entity has. But since we don't want to see all of them in this browse screen, we can do that in the details screen later. We're going to remove a lot of them. Like, well, we only want to know the start date, probably the street, what else? The phone number. So since the phone number of the customer is not really a field of the appointment itself, we need to separately add it as other screen data, and then we're just going to add customer.phone to it. All right. Reload. Save first. Reload. And you see, nicely formatted tile list. And you resize, and you see, it automatically adapts to the smaller screen size as well. Still usable on the phone. And the thing that you probably noticed is I actually didn't stop the application in the background, right? I did some live edits in the background, changed the screen designer, just went back to the application without F5ing in VS, just F5ing IE to reload the page, and everything was updated live there. All right, let's add some more screens to this application. Now I want to see the details. On the rows layout, I have an action. On the tile list, actually, I have this action, item tab, which defines what I want to do when I tab this list item or tile list item. And in here, we have a lot of actions already predefined for you that you can just use, that you don't have to write your own code for. So what I want to do is I want to view the select appointment. And I don't have a screen for that yet, so it asks me to actually create a new screen. Clicking OK brings up the screen template dialog again. It filters some pre-selection for me. In that case, only the view details screen makes sense. I got the appointment details here. I could also include the relations of the appointment table, the photos and rooms. I'm not going, well, let's do it actually for now. Let's include the relations as well to see what's happening. I click OK. And now this screen is created as well, F5. And you see, got this application. Clicking on one of the tiles will forward me to the details screen. I got a nicely formatted 2-column layout. For each of the relations, I have a separate tab that I can use here. And again, resizing this smaller down to the phone. The 2 columns wrap into 1 column eventually. And it's still usable on the phone and completely works. All right. Let's make this screen a bit nicer. Let's customize the screen a bit, do some customization of the layout. So I see that, well, we have the start date and end date here. I already know that since I'm coming from the bar screen, I don't need it here, just remove them. I move the state up here so that I have the complete address nicely formatted in 1 column. Probably don't need to know my own name and probably not the customer name either anymore. But I want to include the customer phone number and the customer email address as well. Customer.phone. Just to show you that in the background, we're using the capabilities that HTML5 gives you. So those specific semantics types, they are actually formatted using HTML5 tags. So this is an email address. Clicking it would open your default email application on a mobile device. It's probably some email application on your mobile device. Phone, like on a mobile device, you click the phone number and you can directly initialize a phone call to this customer, right? Because this is standard HTML5 text that we're using in the background. All right. Now, I see that something's wrong in this appointment, or I actually want to update how many stuff we already completed in this move. So let's add another screen to it. On this screen, I want to add the ability to actually edit the appointment. And we have a command bar up here. And clicking Add brings me to this dialog again where we have a predefined action for each of the entities that you see on the screen, appointments, photos, and rooms. In this case, I want to edit the current appointment and ask me to create a new screen again because it doesn't exist. And this time, I just want to edit the details. OK. And it creates a new screen for me here. And in this case, it adds the input fields instead of the labels for all of the fields. Let's do some nice formatting again. I don't want the mover actually to edit the move type, and well, the state comes into address column again. I don't want them to modify start and end date, neither employee nor customers, but probably the phone number and email address again, because there might have been an error in that one. Customer.email, and probably the name as well. We accidentally misspelled the name on the call, first name. All right, and then going back to the other screen, this command should have a nice icon with it. So we provide you with some icons out of the box. Get that list of stuff. You can always add your own custom icon as well if you want to. In this case, it's edit. And run the application again. Browse the upcoming appointments. We go into one of the appointments. You see now we have a new action on the bottom, edit appointment. And clicking this brings up a dialog where I can edit the current appointment. To show the responsiveness of this layout again, when I resize that to the phone, what's going to happen is that at some point, this dialog is becoming a screen. So still usable on the phone. This appointment is 70% complete. I want to change the email address because it's wrong. So we have validation for you built in as well. For all the semantic types that we have, like phone number, email address, and all that kind of stuff, you get validation by default. You don't have to do it yourself. If you want to, if you have your own custom validation logic, you can plug that in, of course. Let's see, what else do we have for mobile devices? Pop-ups. Okay. Let's go back to the home screen. So imagine you have a lot of appointments coming up, and you want to filter them for, let's say, the customer that you're going to, because you know you're going to a certain customer, you don't know when exactly, and that's why you want to filter the screen. So let's go back to the browse appointment screen, to the home screen. And on the left side, you see the query. This is basically our view model. We create a MVVM architecture under the HUD for you automatically. And this is the representation of your view model. And we want to change this view model so that it has a parameter, which is the customer name, that you can query for. So we added the query. And this is the second designer that I talked about. This is the query designer. And in here, you have the ability to add certain filters to it, sort it, and add parameters. So we'll add a filter, and we want to filter for customer, let's say, last name equals to a parameter. And we don't have one yet, so we will add it. And we want to make it optional so that if you don't type in any value, it will still be shown. All right. Going back to the screen, you see that this parameter is now part of the query that you have on your view model on the left side. We will add a pop-up which will show this parameter where you filter it. Because imagine on a small phone, you probably don't want to have this field shown up all the time because of your limited real estate that you have available. So we will hide it in a pop-up, and we'll add a gesture that you tap, which will show the pop-up where you then can type in the last name of the customer and will then filter the list. So add a pop-up, just drag and drop the last name into the pop-up. And then in the command bar, we will add a new command which will show the pop-up. It's called group for now, that's okay, we could rename it. And then we want to add a new and nice icon again. Let's say a filter icon here. Save and run the application. So now you see the command bar is showing up again with a new command. I click it. Well, we could have changed the name as well, of course, to something more meaningful like filter or search. And now we get the pop-up down here where you can filter for a last name. And yeah, I don't see any last name at the moment. Let's quickly change the screen to include the last name as well. So add other screen data, customer last name, save, refresh. Oops. Okay, last name. So show filter, and let's filter for Flash. And you see, it's filtering for this user. Remove this one again, tapping out, and you see the complete list again. All right. That's what we give you out of the box. A lot of controls, a lot of semantic types, automated resize to the phone and tablet, and all that kind of stuff. don't have to worry about it, validation a lot. Now, at some point of time, that won't be enough for you, I promise, unfortunately. And now you need to learn a bit of JavaScript at least. It's a bit different from the managed world when you start writing JavaScript, but you get used to it, I promise. So you basically have two ways to customize your screens with JavaScript. Either you customize an existing control, you change the styling of it, or you add some additional functionality to it, or you write your own custom control. So let's make this tile list a bit more nice first. So instead of having a rows layout here, we will use a custom control. And on each of the designers, you have this write code drop down in the top right, which is very important. That's where all the hooks that we provide you are. And for the custom control, if you change something to custom control, you get the render method. And that's where we drop you into code, into JavaScript. And this is the standard hook. And in each render method, you basically have two parameters that we pass to it, element and content item. Element is your DOM element on the screen that you can modify using jQuery. Content item, that's your view model that you see on the left column in the screen designer where you have all your data that you want to show on the screen. So in that case, let's make it a bit nicer. And I prepared a few snippets because I don't want to do too much live coding here. So let's add this code snippet. And as I said, it looks scarier than it actually is. So basically what it does, it creates a new div element and headline of the third level in there. And then it formats the date using a library which is called Moment, which is an open source library, which is actually not part of the project yet, so I need to add it to the project. And then it also adds the first and last name of the customer and appends all of that to the DOM tree. So we need to add this library Moment. And in order to do that, we have two different views in LightSwitch. We have the logical view, which is what you've seen so far. And we have the file view, which goes under the hood. And that's basically where you see the default Visual Studio project structure that we create for you under the hood. Remember this 3-tier architecture? That's it. And you can extend it with every possible way that you have in Visual Studio. There's no limitations to that. So we have our HTML client project here, which is a JavaScript project. And in there, you can look into the content directory. That's where we have all the CSS that we provide by default, jQuery mobile CSS, MSLS, and so forth. We have the scripts where you have jQuery mobile data.js, which is our data layer, and MSLS, Microsoft LightSwitch, which is our Microsoft LightSwitch library. And now we want to add Moment to it. So right-click the client, manage NuGet packages. And that's what you basically already have in MVC and all other web applications. Let's hope that the internet connection is working. All right, so let's search for Moment. There it is. So we have this Moment.js library, and we are just going to install it. What this does, well, that was quick. It just adds a JavaScript library to your project. So what you see now in your scripts directory, there's this Moment.js library, which wasn't there before. The only other thing we need to do is to change default HTML to actually reference the library to include it. So let's do that. Text JavaScript, source is script moment.js. Close. All right, let's save all of the other files, save all, and run the application. Remember what we did? We changed the tile list row template to be custom control, which uses the Moment library to render it in a different way, and that's how it looks like now. Let's continue with some more customizations. On the view appointment screen, what we want to do is, depending on, let's do some logic, some conditional formatting. Depending on how much the appointment is completed, let's say like over 90%, it's green. Below 90%, it's red. So in that case, we need to go to back to the logical view, view appointment, and on the percent complete field, in that case, we're not going to make it a custom control, but we're just using post-render to modify the styling of it. So I have my snippet here again. If content item value, remember content item is the value of your percentage at this point of time, is larger than 90%, we're not applying the styling directly here in JavaScript, but we're just adding a CSS class to it, %high, and then we will do the styling in the separate CSS file. Else, %low, two different styles. So now back to the file view where we have to add the CSS. And you see a lot of CSS files in here. What you should keep in mind is don't change most of them, because we will override them when we upgrade. The file that's supposed to change by you is user customization CSS. You can also add additional CSS files if you need more structure, but just don't edit the other ones. In user customization CSS, we already have a few styles defined for you that you're supposed to change, like the font style if you have a corporate design which wants to have a different font family. And now we're just adding the style for the two new classes, %high and %low. %high makes the color green. %low makes the color red. Save and F5. Going into the details screen, you see this one is gone. That doesn't look good. Oh, it doesn't have any percentage yet. So this one, it's 70%. You see it's red because it's below 90. Let's change the first appointment to actually have a value in there. Let's say 90%. Okay. Well, it's still red, which is wrong, right? The thing here is we didn't apply data binding yet. So the post render wasn't called again at that point of time, so it still thinks it's like zeros, which would be red. If I reload the application, which will reload everything in the background, and go into it, it should be green. 91? Okay, same problem. Reload. Whew. Green. Okay, but that's really not what you want, right? You don't want to reload the application to apply your conditional styles. So that's where the concept of data binding, which you know from XAML, which you know from Windows Store application, all that kind of stuff, comes into play. So let's apply some data binding. Let's say to the title. We don't want to show view appointment, but we actually want to show the name of the customer in the title and also the time of the appointment. So back to the screen designer. File, view, logical view, view appointment. So on the details tab, we will change the post render method. And in here, we are applying some data binding. So there's one method for data binding, only one method that you need to remember, which is content item.databind. And then you specify the path to the view model property that you actually want to data bind to. And then every time this changes, this function is called, which we'll call the format appointment screen title function. So every time the first name of the customer or the last name of the customer is changed, we'll now reformat the screen title to include first name customer, last name customer, and the start and end date. Let's see if that works. So we have Colin Wilcox here, and we will edit his name because we accidentally misspelled this X should be a Z. Save, and you see the screen title changed dynamically without reloading the application. All right. Now, we talked about photos. Movers should make photos from your items that have damage so that this is audited. And we already have the Photos tab here, so let's add some file upload for some new photo that you want to upload here. We don't have a file upload control out of the box for you, but there are plenty available on the web. I chose one, and I'll just include that one. So image uploader base 64 encoding, add that to the scripts directory. So I have my image uploader.js here now. And again, I need to reference it in default HTML. So let's copy this one to here. Image uploader.js. All right. That should do the trick. Now, back to the view appointment screen. We have this second tab, Photos. And in here, we want to add a command to upload a new photo. So in the command bar, we're going to add a new tab to create a new Photos, add and edit new. We don't have a screen for it yet, so let's create one. And let's call it upload photo instead. So now, we don't need to select the appointment here because that's already pre-selected, because remember, we are coming from the appointment screen. You can just remove that. So photo has a picture and a caption. At the moment, this will show a picture which is not existent yet, so we need to change this one to a custom control, which is our file upload control. Custom control. And the caption could be really long, so let's change this from a text box to a text area instead. And now we need to add the picture control here. So write code, picture render. And I have one line of code for you. So you need to write one line of code to embed an existing third-party control into your light switch application. Start. Okay, let's go to the appointment. Photos. I could have chosen a nicer icon. Add photo. And now here, you got your image upload control. It's not very nice, I agree, but still. Browse. Let's see, I prepared some photo for you. Does this even meet the US import regulations? Save. And the photo's uploaded. Oh, we can't see it yet. Let's quickly change the screen to actually show the picture as well. View appointment. Instead of the summary of the photo, we're making this a rows layout again. We have the picture and the caption. And the picture should probably be a bit wider, like 150 pixels. Save without restarting the application. Here you go. Resize your application. Works on the phone. Back on the tablet. Cool. Some more custom controls. Let's say, well, the percentage complete is green, but not really nice. So let's change that to be a gauge control instead. Where is our Wishmo guy again? So let's make this a gauge control that Wishmo is actually providing. So let's add their library first. In the file view, we go to new get package manager, and we search for Wishmo. And there's this Wishmo complete library. That's all we need. Install. It asks us whether we want to accept the license, which is OK for now. It pulls in quite a lot of stuff, actually. So I guess there's a lot of useful stuff in there. Now we need to add the references to the default HTML. I have them here. They have some custom styles that we need to add, CSS style sheets, and some custom JavaScript here that we also need to add. There you go. And then back to the view appointment screen. We changed the percentage complete into a custom control now. So let's make that a custom control. And in the render method, we'll just add basically a 3-liner of code to render your control. So that's the 3-liner, and I have 2 more 2-liners here. And that's all you need to add a third-party control to your light switch application. F5. Back in the appointment, you got that nice control. And some nice animations. I applied data binding as well, so let's change the percentage complete from 90 to 10. And you see how it's going down again, and going up, and going down, and going up. All right? So I got 14 minutes left. I still want to show you how you can do custom themes and how you deploy that application to Azure, and I think we can get that done in the rest of the 10 minutes, and then we have some time for questions. So let's speed this up a bit. Corporate design. So basically every company has its own corporate design, some custom colors, some custom images, a custom font type that you want to apply to all of your applications. And actually jQuery Mobile makes it really easy for you to do that, and we leverage the functionality that jQuery Mobile provides you. So first of all, you might have some nice images. So you see when I start the application, there is this spinning wheel and the user splash screen logo, and then on the top left, you also have your logo up there. So let's replace those to be in the corporate design of the Contoso Moving Company. In the file view, in the content directory, we have a folder called images, where you have user logo and user splash. And those are basically your 2 logos that you have that you can replace. And I have some nicer ones that somebody created for us, definitely not me. And I'll add them and just override the existing ones. Yes, there you go. Restart, and now we have this nice truck up there. And this truck is orange, but the rest of the application is still blue, so we want to change the color of the application. So that's where jQuery Mobile Theme Roller comes into play. So what you need to do is you need to go to jQueryMobile.com. That's what we use under the hood. And in there, you got your themes up here. And with that tool, you can, like even non-designers like me, can create a custom theme in a matter of only seconds, actually, if it would load that fast. So get rolling. So what Theme Roller is showing here is basically the default themes that jQuery Mobile provides. We want to start from our current theme. So let's get back to the solution. And in the solution, we have our own theme. We actually provide 2 themes for you, light theme and dark theme, that you can switch between already if you don't want to create your own one. At the moment, we're using the light theme, obviously. So let's copy and paste all the CSS they have in the light theme into Theme Roller. Just use this import functionality, paste it here, import, and that's the color scheme that you currently see in the application. And now let's change that a bit around to be a bit more like the corporate design of the Contoso Moving Company. So let's make it a bit more orange here, probably. Also, those hover effects should be some kind of orange. There you go. Well, that's enough for now. I mean, if you look here at the left bar, you see you can actually change a lot of things around. Buttons, dates, text colors, shadows, backgrounds, all that kind of stuff. To completely change the look and feel, like you can add corners to it, like this, or you can add a disk to the icons, add a box shadow. And then if you're finished customizing, basically your download the theme again. You give it a name, Contoso theme, download, zip. Now open the zip file, and in here you have your themes directory and a minified and a normal version of the theme. Let's add those to our project. Stop the application first, and now add them here. And now we're just changing the reference in default HTML to actually point to that theme. You see we have two different theme references here. We basically have the jQuery mobile reference, that's the first one, and depending on whether you want to use light or dark, we optimize the theme a bit for you. So since we're still light, we'll keep that reference around. We'll just change this one to Contoso theme, F5. And there you go. Orange, and if I click this one, you see this turns to orange as well. You actually don't see the rounded corners at the moment. We fixed that in the runtime update that I mentioned before. I just didn't apply it to that solution yet. Runtime updates, like every other third-party library, just go to the NuGet package manager and update the runtime version to the newer one. Okay, theming. That was theming. Now let's quickly deploy the application to Azure. Do I have my Azure portal open? No. I recommend using Azure websites, which is good enough for most of the cases. You don't need the cloud services. Sign in with a different account. Are you familiar with creating Azure websites in the Azure portal? Yes? No? Who's not familiar with that? Ah. It's easy if you can log in. Okay, give me a second. What the? I think that's it. There you go. All right. So this is a Windows Azure portal. We have other sessions which talk in more detail about this one. But all you need to know, you can get a free trial version of that. Websites is what you need to know. There are a lot of more services that Azure offers, but the only thing we want to do here is websites. 7 minutes left. So create a new one, a new website. I will do a custom create so that I can attach a database to it. Remember, 3-tier architecture, we always need the middle tier, and we always need a data tier, the database as well. So let's call it event TechEd. I have 2 subscriptions. And I will put that into the West US region for now because I already have a database created. It's more important that your database and your website live in the same spot and that your website is actually close to you. So I will create a new SQL database. Next, I will name that one I1TechEd on my existing server, where I already have a password for. Click OK. And now it's creating a new website for me, basically provisioning an IIS instance and a SQL database in the background for me automatically. And it's done. So 30 seconds, you get a new IIS server up and running. Back into Visual Studio. In order to deploy that application, let's first change the release configuration to release so that I'm not deploying all of the debug symbols as well. And then right-click my project, publish. And this is our publish wizard. You have 2 options here. I talked about a web service only deployment before. In that case, I want to deploy the client as well. So complete application. I want to deploy it to Windows Azure. I could also deploy it on-premise. And now I want to use my Ultimate subscription. It asks me for the service type. That's where I can choose between Azure Cloud Services and websites. Websites, good enough for most cases, so that's what we are just going to do here. And I already had like a list of websites that you saw in the portal before. So now it will ask me which website I actually want to use here. So let's use this new one that I just created. And now it asks me to create an administrator. So when I really want to deploy the application, I want to have an administrator which can, where the administrator has all the access rights to the application. And that's what I'm going to create here. So let's call him admin. I didn't show how you do permission management, all that kind of stuff in the middle tier business logic, but you can do that as well, and it's part of our hands-on labs. For business applications, I always recommend to enable HTTPS. Yes. Digital signature, this is something you only need if you're doing Silverlight. You can ignore that for the HTML client. So now it asks me which database I want to connect this application to. And since I already created one in the Azure portal, it already has the correct connection string up there that I could use. And it also publishes a database schema to this database. In that case, the database would be empty, right, because it's my first time deployment. But imagine you're deploying a second and third and a fourth time. What we're doing there is we are automatically upgrading your database scheme if you change the tables and relationships and all that kind of stuff in the background. You don't need to worry about that one either. I will actually not publish a database schema for now, and I will use a different database because there's already some demo data in, so that makes a better demo. And I think I forgot something very important, which is to configure the firewall for this database so that I can actually deploy it. Let's do that here. Manage. Yes, I want to add the current IP to the rules. OK. And next, summary, application version, website, Azure, forms authentication, don't publish a database, and this URL. Publish, and let's hope that in the remaining 3 minutes that works well. I think it is doing something in the background. Okay. It's always the point in time where the demo can go wrong because the service is down or something else happens. Woo! It looks good. So let's remember, deployed the application successfully. And now I will open it under the URL that we just created, -teched.azurewebsites.net/. For each client, you have a subfolder in there. In this case, we are going to show the HTML client. There you go. That's the login form. We enabled forms authentication, as you remembered. So let's log in as T. Adams, and I think that is the password. And this is the application that we just built. You see the orange theme. You see all of the appointments. You see the gauge control in here. It's 82% complete. Everything up and running on Windows Azure in the cloud, done in about an hour.